The Mark II Psycho Gundam is one of my favourite underrated designs. So I got the Fix Figuration figure a long time ago because I didn't think Bandai would ever actually make a high grade, but here we are. You can see side by side the proportions are actually really different, the high grades being way better in my opinion. The legs aren't as skinny and the chest isn't as separate and boxy looking. The finish and decals on the Fix Figuration look much better though, so I'll definitely need to see if I can get some decals for this, because decals are about the only thing it doesn't come with. It comes with a standard Bandai action base, as well as extra little weapon stands to display the reflector bits, lots of beams of its own so you can have every single finger firing, as well as ones that can plug into the wrists. And then it of course has wire for the arms to extend and go and do their own thing. Strike out on their own in the world. The only normal Gundam accessory it comes with are the shields. They're nice and large and articulated, but I usually always find myself still wanting something for the hands to do. Like with my Kshatriya, for example. I keep not really knowing how to pose it, because everything it does is in the binders, and so then what the hell do you do with the arms and hands? But with something like this, where the fingers themselves are weapons, it hasn't really been an issue. I haven't really felt the lack of any handheld weaponry. It also comes with an entire extra head for the battle damaged look. You unfortunately can't actually attach it to the body. The pipes on the sides get in the way. You could take it apart and swap things over and rebuild things in order to try and get it to fit, or alternatively you could just cut the pipes shorter because they are supposed to be damaged and cut, so wouldn't actually be that out of place. But it's a bit of a shame that there's no just straightforward way to make it fit on. But you can see all the detail easier on this head with it being opened up. You can see the thrusters on the back have separate yellow pieces to go in them. Unfortunately, the centres should be grey or black, I think. But they are very hard to see, so it doesn't really matter that much. You also can't see the detail that goes behind the eyes on the normal head, but here you can see the inner workings of the eyes, the kind of core eyes behind the face that just look really cool. On this head you can also see that the eyes are colour separated as well. They're not clear, instead being a pearlescent pink, so if you wanted to try and stick some LEDs in this, it would be a bit more work. You can also see the safety flags on the V-fin that I've removed on the normal head. On the regular head I used the sticker because I just generally prefer them. They are more reflective and just stand out more. But also on this kit you can see that the eyes on the stickers are larger, whereas the moulded eyes are much thinner. It makes the moulded eyes look really crisp and finely detailed, but it means that the stickers pop even more in comparison. The only other stickers are for the centres of the Mega Beam Cannons all over the kit, in order to make them black. It would have been nice if that was colour separated, or they even just had peg holes in them so that you could also plug beams into them to show them in use. But some of them are more detailed. The main front-facing three don't need stickers, and also have more detail on their insides with lines going down the yellow parts. Same with the thrusters on the bottom of the waist and in the backpack. The Mega Beam Cannons on the calves have holes in the middle, but you need to put a sticker on the purple armour underneath if you want them all to match. That also means that if you don't put any of the stickers on, you can't have all of the Mega Beam Cannons match, because the ones on the calves would have purple centres rather than yellow like the rest of them, which is a bit unfortunate. But everything else is properly colour separated. All the various red and yellow lines are accurately replicated and look fantastic. Even the tiny little red beam cannons on the head are a separate piece. The armour also has two tones, which really adds a lot to the look and makes it look more premium. Even though the secondary colour is used quite sparingly, it just works really well. And there isn't a lot I can even think of improving with paint. I do think the legs could do with a bit more red, so I might paint some of these moulded lines in red, just to even out the red across the whole mobile suit more. Even though it would be inaccurate to the design, it's not a flaw of the kit that there's no red there. And then I really want to paint the piping to make it stand out, and because I'm just a big fan of that kind of detail being metallic. The more detailed thruster pieces also don't all match each other. The outside of the ones under the waist are grey, but the ones on the backpack are purple for some reason, which also just doesn't contrast with the surrounding purple armour as much. So I'd like to paint all of those to match as well. With all that separation, the build is quite involved, but it all went together really smoothly. The instructions do thankfully actually list all of the runners that you need at the start of each subassembly, which is just great to see for a high grade. Looking through the instructions and comparing to the MG Vidar, you finish building the mobile suits of both on similar page numbers. The chest assembly alone takes up almost 3 full pages, and in fact has to be spread over 4. You can see the Psycho Gundam's instructions are less dense than the Vidar's though, unsurprisingly. While there's a similar amount of steps per page, the amount you're doing per step is vastly different. You can see here each step has you pretty much doing just one thing for the Psycho Gundam, whereas in the Vidar, every step has you doing and putting multiple things together pretty much. I wouldn't recommend skipping ahead in the instructions in order to assemble it as you go and do the waist before the legs, because all of the sub-assemblies actually lock together on this kit. You have to put the legs on when they're completely 90 degrees backwards, for example, and then when you rotate them down they're locked onto the waist. And if you skip ahead and already have the waist attached to the body, it can be quite difficult to actually get the legs on. You have to take the back skirt off, the side skirts get in the way. It's just a bit of a pain. It does actually come with a few spare parts, the only really notable ones being spare V-fins, which is really nice. In case you break any of them, you have some spares. Makes it easier and safer to try and remove the safety flags and everything. It took me around 8 hours to get everything together, but that's including doing some quick sanding of the nubs. There are unfortunately some quite bad nub spots, like you can see them on the arms, the side skirts, the sides of the knees, the feet, and on the backpack, even after, like I said, doing some sanding with my little glass file. Even though it's a high grade with a transformation, it actually comes out really quite solid. The only thing that really moves when I shake it are the legs, which, considering the size of this thing, is pretty great. And it is big. It is 1/144th scale, but it's so large that it still towers over even MGs, and so still pretty much fits fine into a 1/100 collection, which is why I got it. Unfortunately, it doesn't move that effectively. The head at first might seem like it can't really look up, but if you stick with it, the joint can actually extend and allow it to raise a good amount, enough. Downward is then much better and pretty much all you need, and then while you have that joint raised, it gets a good amount of tilt and can rotate fully. The arms can pull out of the body a little bit, allowing the arms to come across the chest somewhat. It's a decent range, enough. It could be a lot better. The arms themselves though can raise past 90 degrees, and then of course have a bicep swivel and a double joint at the elbow that's actually really quite cool. It's nothing that complicated, but the fact that it kind of separates and moves differently and is well integrated like this on a high grade is still really quite nice. The hands attach to the wrist on a ball peg, which also kind of functions as a slip joint because the peg goes in a good amount, but then when you start articulating it, you can pull it out a little bit in order to increase the range. The innards of the wrist itself also wiggle a bit and then can swivel entirely. And then, of course, every finger is articulated. The fingers themselves only have one joint. The tips of the fingers, while being separate pieces, aren't articulated, but that is for the best because they need to have room in order to fit the beams into, and they need to be stable enough to hold them. There's rotation at the waist, very minimal ab crunch, and backward movement. The cockpit hatch can essentially open, it just doesn't have a cockpit because of the transformation and everything. Personally, I would probably prefer a cockpit than a transformation, but eh. And there's zero side to side tilt. The backpack can also open up and pull down in order to store and show the not in use reflector bits, and doing that also reveals another nice little thruster. None of the waist armour are on ball joints. The side skirts seem like they might get in the way of the hips, but then they're several jointed, so you can completely move them out of the way if you need to, allowing the hips to come out a full 90 degrees. No real inward movement at the hips. Forward gets hindered by the front skirts, so it doesn't quite come all the way 90 degrees forward. And backward is extremely hindered because of this kit's extremely non-premium butt flap. It's just one huge chunk of plastic. It can be a little deceiving at first, but there is also a thigh swivel. You just have to extend the hips in order to allow it to move. Really quite annoying, honestly. It adds an extra step to any posing, and requires you to make it taller and alter the proportions and make it leggier. So not at all ideal. I don't really think it was worth it. I would prefer the joint was just smaller or something, so there was just the range without having to do this. It is nice having the option of extending the legs though. If you were putting it in a 1/100 collection or anything, then you can make it taller, which is always a nice option. Just would prefer it wasn't required. Knees are double jointed and also a bit disappointing. The lower joint gets less than 90 degrees. It gets hindered by the back. That back armour can actually slide down and out of the way, but then the underlying frame starts to get in the way. I feel like they could have just designed it so that the armour could move further and there was more of a gap underneath. And then that top joint also bends, allowing for a total knee bend of just past 90 degrees. But the knee does extend a lot in the process, which isn't ideal. The feet can move back this far, a decent amount. Forward, not at all, unless you pull the joint down and extend it, and then you can get some forward. Again, not ideal having to make it taller, but if you need a lot of forward movement, or just want to compensate for that height increase, you can use the transformation mechanisms to push the foot backwards, and then raise the front. Then, at the bottom of the foot, there is some pivot, enough. Not an insane amount, but enough. Extending doesn't really help the pivot because it's the armour around the foot itself that is hindering it. If you really wanted more range, you could actually cut away that armour, and it should increase the range quite a lot, but I would have to test that before actually recommending it. Overall, the articulation is fine, but it is almost certainly the weakest aspect of the kit, but it's fine, it gets the job done, and I'd say the kit itself is overall really good. I'm really happy with it. It looks fantastic. It was a fun, interesting and unique build. It's huge. It does generally move how you need it to. It's a really great kit. If you enjoyed this video at all, please subscribe, because I'll also be reviewing the MG Vidar, which arrived at the same time as this. Thank you so much for watching regardless. Until hopefully next time, bye.